All
This
right, well, welcome
conference will now
everybody.
be recorded.
I'll start over now. All right, welcome everybody. This is going to be our queuing system chat. And this time I do have the date right. We're in the right year, 2020. Um, Monica, you can go ahead and flip to the next screen. We tried to keep this. We wanted to keep this one a little shorter so that we could have more time to talk. And yet this is a big one, so I'm hoping we're successful. Because we want to have more time for people to ask questions and exchange ideas. So we're going to just dive right in. What do we mean by a queuing system? Um, there's really two ways of thinking of moving your dog around the field. Um, some people base their cues off of a circular system where they're giving their dog cues to move in a clockwise or a counterclockwise method. Often you'll hear them saying things like away and come by, or I have clock and counter. I hear gee and haw. I hear a lot of things, but they're basically working on the idea that the dog is moving in a circular fashion around the field. And then some other folks base their cues on a more of a grid system, an XY system. They're using cues to have the dog go straight out, so basically a go out, and using something to move them in closer, like a walk on. And then they have a cue to move the dog left or right on the field. I've heard people use left and right, and hats off to them for being able to do that because I can't do it for myself. Um, I've people who will use a cue like over and use an arm signal to direct which way they want the dog to go. But in essence, they're moving the dog really in more of a forward and back and left and right motion. So those are the two sort of basic systems that are used. Yep, and Monica, go ahead and flip to the next one. So, a question that comes up, well, which is better? What should I do? And the answer is really neither is better. They're both good. They both work in, they might work better in particular situations out on the field, some better than other different ones, but both have their positives, both have their cons. And really what, I recommend is start training with one. Doesn't matter which one, either way. Which it's probably best to do the one that makes most sense to you. And on all of my guys, I'm sorry, I made you suck it up and go circular first. But do the one that makes most sense for you. And then you're going to find down the road, you're going to start adding cues from the other system because it starts to make sense. Those of us who are using a circular, we're using aways and combis. Sooner or later, we end up in the situation where the dog's further out on the field, and we really need them to move straight in toward us. So we use some sort of walk-on cue. Or there are those of us, we find, well, the dog's in too close, and it makes more sense to use some form of go out to send them straight back. So we all, at some point as we get down the road, we start using cues from both systems. But probably what's best is to look at what it really comes down to is as you're training, start with one, add the rest of the cues as you see it, you need them, and then start watching which cues work best with your dog in various situations out on the field. And then, that's two pieces of information. At that point in time, these are the cues that work the best. But down the road, I maybe need to work on making this cue a little clearer. And so, a real important thing is to just be very clear and consistent in your training. Probably one of the things that I try to encourage people to do is I do it. I write down all my cues that I have, including, what are the words, what are my hand motions, and what does it mean? What should the dog do when they hear and see that? And then when I'm out practicing with my dog, I find out whether that's what my dog thinks. And I start finding out, ooh, maybe I need to go train this more, revise that more. But the first thing is to have in your mind, what does it mean? What should it look like? What does it mean? Okay, now let's go.
Okay, sorry. I was
That's
playing.
okay. That's okay. I talked more than I said I would. So then it kind of comes down to, now this is a really broad one. Monica and I chatted, and so we made this a really broad category. You know, when do we use the different cues? Um, and what it comes down to is, this is very broad. We were gathering a lot there. So and the answer is, it depends. It depends on where you are with your dog in the training, and and what you need to work on in that particular moment. So
sorry. I don't know how I'm switching the slides. I'm doing something, but sorry. Go ahead.
it might be on an auto, yeah. So
okay.
we talked through some particular situations, and one of them is, a lot of folks use a go out, meaning go straight out the direction I point you. And you know, there's a scatter of balls out there, and it's one that tends to work pretty well when we're up close. Um, but it starts to become more difficult with distance and when there's multiple balls on the field. And this is one where we're kind of hoping that we can play a video. Monica had it turned in a really nice run. She had been working really hard with JoJo on going out and getting the right ball. And Monica uses go outs. She uses she lines herself up. She points straight out to where she wants the dog to go, and then, you know, the dog goes out and lines up behind the ball. She had an instance though where she sent the dog out, and I know Monica was doing her very best to be very clear. The balls were, you know, she'd already broken through the basic formation. The balls were scattered, and she did a send out, and JoJo went out and did her best, picked a ball, thought she went, you know, did the thing, but it wasn't what Monica meant. And so Monica redirected her dog to another ball. JoJo broke down, and Monica couldn't get her. She ended up, I think, calling her back in or letting her push a ball and then redirecting her, because JoJo had thought she did it right, and Monica had to move her over. So there was a couple things that went on. One is, you know, JoJo needs to be a little more comfortable with moving, but it was interesting to watch that dog go out and be so sure she was right, and then resort to eating grass, saying, I thought I did what you meant. So, Monica, do you think you have that video that you can try pulling up?
Yeah, I was like, as you were talking, I was like, I think I know which ball she meant. So let me see if I can.
I think I know exactly where she's talking about.
I think, and it will be jerky on the screen. It doesn't play through, but we can maybe capture the moment. So here I was sending her to that red ball.
Yeah,
that
she
one
sends her out. JoJo goes out, just solid.
Well, I don't know. She stopped to eat grass there, though. No, that wasn't the problem. That's not
this
it.
it's turkey, but she goes through. She's all
It's
happy.
the next.
She's like, great.
Yeah, it's the next one where
three balls.
Right,
Those look really well scattered, don't they?
no, I had to push one back out because she pushed in one by accident, and then it rolled. I tried to push it over there, and then it rolls right next. Okay.
The yellow ball. You did so well. But you're really looking to get
So
that.
yeah, there it is, right there. Nope,
you
that
were
wasn't
trying
it either.
the green ball.
Okay, do you have a minute for me because I didn't find the right one? This isn't right. I don't think.
Yeah, it's not right. This is not the one.
Okay. Well, do you have a minute for me because I don't. Oh well.
Yeah, go on. We'll go on and we'll come back to this.
All right.
So it's one of those times when using go outs. It's one of those times where go outs work really well when the balls aren't too far out. And I will, you know, I use obedience as an example. a lot of people, that are doing obedience, and I see some of the names on the list. I know you also do obedience, and you will practice the the glove retrieve, where you basically, it's directed retrieve. And if you think about how much, how relatively close those gloves are, and if you watch people they practice, they're so precise on exactly how they send that dog. And yet you will see dogs often go, yep, nope, I think you meant this one over here. Going straight out is harder than we think. The obedience people, I know they practice that like crazy, and yet it still can go wrong. So it's one of those times where the go out, it's great up close when we can point, but when it gets further out, having cues that work a little bit more on the idea of the circular, where you send them out and around and you can move them. Sometimes that's where the circular cues, they're a little more handy. So we'll come back to that one when Monica gets her video. Another thing for you to think about is your dog goes out the way you sent her. However, it doesn't matter whether you're using a straight go out or an away come by. Your dog goes out and stops behind some ball, and it's not the ball you meant. And Monica asked me, she goes, well, what should I do then? Do I use my circular cues, or do I use my move over cues? And my answer to that was, well, it depends on at the time, which one is your dog more comfortable with. I certainly, with my dog, can, if he goes out and he's stopped behind the wrong ball, I can continue to use his aways and combis to move him to the correct ball. But I know people who their dog is much more comfortable and so is the person, using whatever, their left, right, their over cue. So that's one that it's in the big, it depends. There isn't a right or wrong answer to that. So it's one of those times I'd like to ask you guys, what do you do? You know, which cues do you tend to use more? Your aways and combis, or your go outs and left rights? And then what do you do when your dog stops out there on the field and they're staring at you? What cue do you use to move them? Do you stay with your circular cues? Do you switch? Anybody bold enough to tell?
I can tell.
Yeah, good.
Oh, I never did obedience like that, so I always use my aways and come by. And excuse me, I can move my dogs anyway with that. If they get totally confused, I just call them back and start again. But I've had students who've done obedience through utility, and they used to do the straight sends. But I've found that they have started using my way, the circular movements on the going to the point ball, and using their obedience for other movements for the most part.
I think I see that too. Folks that have an obedience background, a lot of them will. I think that's where I see it, where people will often use the circular cues to get them out to the point ball, but then they go back to what's more comfortable, what they that the obedience type cues to move them. I see that definitely. What's anybody else do?
This is Lisa Wisdom. Can you hear me? Okay, I just want to check in. This is a great question, because it's been a great topic I'm teaching a foundation class and an intermediate class now, and I haven't really given anybody any solid what to do, because I think it's individual on what you end up doing. I give them the tools to say you can either do a lineup or you can do a come by. So it's either one that they can do, and I haven't seen anybody get far enough to know what the answer is, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Makes a lot of sense because I can tell you what works well in close. When you get to further distance and a lot more balls, it starts changing. I
It
think.
does, and it does for me, and it has for me and my dog Keeper, because he gets over aroused and then he
Mm-hmm.
loses it, and I have to call him back. And then I notice when I panic, I will go back to using my lineup cue versus come by and away.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you brought it up, that it totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which
And
I'm
we don't.
confusing my dog.
Yeah.
I
Don't we
know
all?
for,
We go back to
yeah,
where we're comfortable.
yep, for sure.
And then we're so happy we get the behavior that we wanted, and I'm like, oh, that was it. That's the answer. And the dog is back. I swear, Mickey is in. Is like, oh God, she did not know what she wanted. I know he's keeping tally on me. That that I'm inconsistent sometimes, you know. So
I
yeah.
tell Keeper I'm sorry all the time. It's me.
Hi, this is Lisa Triggs.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, I just joined a little bit late, but I'm here. My input for this is with teaching this, I am very, what's the word that I want? I'm very respectful of where the person's coming from and their background, because I've had some obedience people, some agility people. So I try and take what they're already doing and the words that come out of their mouth and the hand motions that they're most likely to use and use them for good and not evil. Meaning they're always like, well, what should I call it? And I say, well, what word do you think is going to come out of your mouth? Because that's the word I would choose.
Mm-hmm.
I know
That's great.
I oftentimes want to pick, this really cool word. I'm like, but that's not the word that's going to come out of my mouth. So I don't even bother with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if it's an obedience person, I ask them, well, what's your main focus and how can we take what you do in obedience and apply it to Treibball? If it's an agility person, the same thing, because I don't want them to mess up the other sport that they're trying to do.
Exactly. I agree too.
You
Right,
betcha.
Linda?
Yep. It's very true. You know, and I do the same thing. It's like, you need to tell me what else you're doing, and I'll give you suggestions for cues. But if it's a funny word won't fall out your mouth or it conflicts, um, yeah, don't do it. Tell me. There's a
Well,
lot of languages and a lot of words. We can do something else.
here lately,
So
Chris hasn't even been giving us any words at all. She just tells us to pick something. She doesn't even give us ideas anymore.
well, I have somebody I know who's starting to use French words to make sure she doesn't. She has French as a good language for her, and that way she's sure she doesn't. She does obedience and other. She goes, if I use the French words here, I don't screw up. And it's like, because she has to work, she has to use them. She's very clear. So yeah, yeah. Sue's right though.
Whether
Everybody and
they're
all their cues.
French, German, or anything.
Well, and that's because with so many people and picking different cues, I can't keep everybody straight anymore. You need to tell me. Um, so yeah, and with picking cues, the other thing I'd say is what I often will tell you is, look, these are my cues, and I'll tell you why this particular one is sucky. um, I've picked some word choices, and once they got out on the field, I went, oh dear, those are too close in sound. So many of our sports we're working pretty close, even if I think obedience, but agility, we're mostly pretty close. But when that dog's 50 feet away and having to really discriminate what we're saying, oh, wow. Words start getting special. So So
I
yeah,
have a saying that, sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I have a saying. I have a saying that I tell my students when I'm teaching them too, and especially with people that come with the agility background, because some people push their dog out on the ball and some people pull their dog out onto the ball. I do a crossbody, which is really kind of not the norm, I think. If my dog's on my left, I use my right hand. And then once he's out there, I continue to use that same right hand to move him right. Where I know a lot of people will, if their dog's on their left, they'll take their left hand and they'll direct their dog out, and then they'll continue with their left hand to move them to the right, their right. And I think everybody does it different, and I used to think it was one way, and I've learned, like, I can't remember who said that, it depends on what their background is, because then you can use their agility, because you know they're going to push that dog with their left side or right side, or switch. But to me, that has made all the sense since I've been helping train Treibball to so many people, and beginner people that have never done a sport versus the people that have done a sport.
Lisa, that was really interesting. I think I understand what you mean by pushing and pulling, but will you just go into a little more depth on that?
So when I'm teaching people how to line up behind the ball, they usually have a ball in a basket, because I don't give them a ball right out of the gate. Because I want them to make they're not mistakes, but the dog doesn't have to be straight. It doesn't matter the way I do it in class, because they're not gonna be anyway. So if the dog, I always have everybody start left-hand side, heel position, and then they either are gonna take their left hand or their right hand, and they're gonna direct their dog out behind the ball basket. And so some people are gonna use their left hand. Some people are going to maybe use the right hand. And it also depends on if they're luring the dog, if they have food in their hand, what hand the food's in, to whether they push the dog or pull the dog. Because if the dog's on the left-hand side and you have a lure, let's just say if you are using a lure and you lured the dog out, you're pushing him. Does that make sense?
So
and if the dog is
the left hand is the push, if they're on your left side, the left hand is pushing, the right hand would be pulling. Is that correct?
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. All right. I got it.
So yeah, and I've taught it both ways to my dogs, but I have found that pulling them out, my dogs get it. They get it, and they get it once they're out there, and I can move them because I use the same hand, and that's the one thing I know I've been so consistent with. Now, once they're out there and might go out, I've messed up my dog, I think, because anyway, that's another topic. I had 30 feet and I lost my footage with him.
Me too.
But I think that if I think about the way you're talking, the push and the pull, I think of it as, if dog's on the left and I use my left hand to send it out, I think of it as I'm pushing them. I don't think in terms, but I think, it's like I'm bowling with the dog. I'm pushing the dog out. If the dog was on the left and I used my right hand to direct it out, someone in my group made it's like spreading fairy dust. They take their hand and they spread the fairy dust, so they're pulling their dog while they spread the fairy dust. So and it wasn't meant anything evil. It's just they were watching. It's like, well, we are either bullying our dog or we're spreading our fairy dust.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like that.
So it's just kind of the, which way. By me, most of the people are agility people, so they're coming into Treibball. So we tend to be very consistent with the idea of, when the dog's near you, you're going to use the hand that the dog isn't. So we would tend to be using that idea. We'd be the ones, we'd be pushing the dog. We'd stick consistent with that, which is typical of agility. You don't tend to use a lot of the cross body cue type things. So
Which totally makes sense to me and is what I've seen, because I think people with a background of whether it's obedience, agility, they are more consistent. Where if you take, I've noticed my average pet person, they're all over the board. They don't know what they're doing, so they're using different hands, and that they're the ones I think that, you know, just out of inexperience confuse the dog more than somebody that has a sports background, because they're going to be more consistent.
Right. And it is so much about that. Which way works? The way you're consistent.
Yep.
Is the one that works. So, yeah, excellent.
Anyone else got any input?
Okay.
Someone's ringing.
Oh, sorry, that's my house phone ringing.
So that almost takes us almost right into the next one, when we're talking about which cues is, which arm signals are clearest to the dog at that distance. So when and that's kind of a leading statement. So often, and it goes, what I see happen is we use some arm signals we think were very clear when the dog's in close, and then when the dog gets out at some serious distance, our arm signals, well, we tend to become those dancers in the box. I see a whole lot of it. And when I say I see a lot of it, I mean in my videos too. I have to go back and go, oh Lord, no wonder my dog was messed up. Look at me. I will see people, you know, when they're selecting and doing arm signals, whether they, you know, if we do a send off of the right side, we use that right arm, and then the dog gets out there, and then suddenly, you know, does that arm stay up? Does that hand tend to do that little wavy motion to you know, keep going? You know, as say the one further down, when the dog turns, you know, when you give the cue for them to stop, to line up, to wait, whatever that, do they turn and see you with that big stop hand up there? You know, are they supposed to be taking hand signals, arm signals at a distance that worked really well when they were up close, and now when they're 50 feet out, the dog's like, I don't know, man. The hand's just up there waving. So when people, you know, what cue do you use? Well, if I'm looking and my dog's out at a distance, I'm picking cues that I'm making sure that I'm not doing something silly with my arms. At least I hope I am. You know, so, you know, and I'd ask you guys, well, so what do you find? Those of you that, you know, you've got your dogs working out at some distance, have you seen things that were working really well when you were up at the closer distances, and then your dog got out there with some serious distance, and now the dog's going, I don't know what you mean? Because we often blame that, well, you know, that concept, well, we just didn't have the distance on that cue, that behavior yet. And I would argue sometimes it's not that we didn't have the distance, it's just that what we thought was a cue is a mishmash. So I ask you, what do you guys see where you've got your dogs out working some distance now? Which of your arm cues have gone to pieces?
I'll be the first to admit that I think a lot went to pieces once the distance involves. And this is Carolyn, by the way. So yes, me and Chris had talked. I think we were both working on the balls in order, and I just was like, I wasn't used to sending him to a correct ball at a distance, and I had started with the come by and away, but then I reverted to which Chris was referring to as the XY, and just sending the dog kind of in a booty in like a ping pong. And then so when I started, I'm like, oh, this will be a breeze. I just have to go back to the come by and away. Well, he didn't think so. He's just But yeah, I got to about intermediate and it fell apart, and it fell apart hard. So I had to just restart. I had to go back to foundations and really, and not to say that it's perfect in any way, shape, or form, but really go back to, all right, what does come by and away mean? That means go around to me, it does, from what I started with teaching, was go around this group of balls and go to the back until I tell you to stop. But that's what's intent, like it means take a wide berth and go around this group of balls. The go back and away means go directly back to the ball right behind, or but my hand signals, that if we were talking about hand signals, were all over kind of the map, and I was doing and I probably still do the wave back a little more than I would like to, because he, so it's the wind blows, and once you break that, and this is at a distance, once you break those balls, every single time they go in a different direction. So that berth of balls can go out to 50, as wide as your field is. So you're going from like a triangle that's in a fixed position, and then they're all spread out. So unless you're training the dog with the balls scattered, and that's what I had to do. I had to start taking the balls and purposely scatter them around, and then go back to the combine away. But this was at a very short distance, because he didn't understand to go take that wide berth. So I guess what the bottom line with the distance was that, yes, it if it's unclear at a short distance, it's going to fall apart at a distance. So really, I agree with Chris that it wasn't really a distance issue at all. It was that I didn't have to worry about it with 3 balls at 25 feet or 6 balls at 40 feet. It's when you had this mass amount of balls at a huge, that were splattered all across the board, where it became difficult. So that's something I think I would say for people that haven't got there yet, is to make sure that you have that, what you're saying, your cues down, and because it's much harder to go back to foundations later. And I think we've learned from going from the standard game, 2 balls in order, where the come by and away are more useful, where you go around, or you're going to a particular ball, that I can't stress enough where training for balls in order from the beginning. If I was to do it all again, I would start right from the get-go, training for going to a particular ball, because it's so hard to go back. But yeah, I do a lot of funny things, and that's why I think I said to the last Clubhouse, the more you can video yourself, or have somebody video you, and have as you can see, just like Chris was saying, that man, no wonder he was falling apart there, because you can really, and it is so new, and it was at least that you were saying that there isn't many people that have done this at a distance, or many videos you can see where you can say, oh, is this right or it's not. We're still in the learning process, so it's hard. But I could say that I agree that it's more what you do in the beginning, and then if you add the distance gradually, I don't see it shouldn't be a problem. It may be for certain breeds that don't necessarily like to go further out or away from the owner, but anyway, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Carol. A lot of things that we say are just, well, we just need to build distance.
No.
Well, it isn't just that we need to build distance. It's that we had, in the beginning, we do some cueing that we don't realize we're doing.
Yeah.
Or we're sloppy or whatever. And then when they get further out, they figured out our system, but it doesn't convey far out on the field. And so now they're guessing. One of the things I like to tell people, and is start with stand in front of a mirror and practice. So it's till you're sure you're confident, you're consistent, and then video it. Put that camera at the opposite end of the field, and without the dog. Don't put the dog there. Just put the camera at the opposite end of the field and video yourself giving your imaginary dog those cues. And what does it look like? Are you consistent? I've seen a go out cue and an away and a come by and a stop hand and a push, and by golly, at distance it all kind of looked just like arm waving, and yet I thought I was really clear, and it was me. I thought I was being so clear, and yet when I looked at that video of me, it's like, oh, my poor dog. No wonder he's making some of the choices he makes, because what I thought was clear isn't at all.
That brings us to how important it is to have a really solid verbal cue that none of them sound the same, and your dog is, just do it from the verbal.
Yes, and that's one I think. I think that's one that I've started to really take away, how much more important the verbals are, because my arm waving can very much look just like that.
Yeah.
Me out there waving hello. And, I think it's so clear. And you know what? At 20 feet, it is clear. At 50 feet, not so much. And especially when you think about, the dog is out there, they're running away from us or across the field and chasing a ball. And then they look up and they catch a glance of our arm flapping. I don't know what it's supposed to mean for that poor dog. And that's what my dog said. I don't know what you're doing down there. It's tough for the dog. So having verbal cues that are very consistent is very important. Very important. And
Anybody else have? Sorry,
yeah.
Chris.
No, go
I was
ahead.
going to see if anyone else wanted to contribute at this juncture.
I have just a quick question. We are allowed a whistle, correct? A whistle sit, a whistle stop?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have a question as well. Are you finding that verbal cues are understood by a dog at 50 feet?
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Unless you do a silly like me where I use away and wait, which at 50 feet. Yeah, that's one of those. Don't pick that stupid pair. With good, yeah. I'm certain.
Yes, they can hear. I think I agree. I learn more in a space that they can hear you, because I tend to say yes or good, and then that's a cue for my dog to stop. So they can hear. They hear 200 times more than we do. So unfortunately, sometimes your mouth doesn't. I think we've all experienced the mouth doesn't always represent what your arm's doing. So that's where confusion comes in. But I don't think that the verbal cues, as far as I've seen or done, have not been a problem. So, yeah.
Would people find it helpful to, like, what if we did a poll and describing, okay, what verbal and physical cue do you use to get your dog to circle around a group of balls to the left? And then people could respond, and that would give information to new people of, oh gosh, here's cues I haven't even started yet or thought about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
might be fun.
I think it'd be cool.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll do it. Anyone else who hasn't talked yet, or who has talked? Well, Chris, what does the bottom right one mean?
So, what I and this is where I was kind of going before is, for some folks, one in particular like me, my my clockwise and my counterclockwise, my away and my come by. And then I later added a go out cue. And I have, I have one of those people, when I want my dog to stop, I throw up the stop hand. In particular, more, if I'm using a walk on, I'm having them walk on and I want them to stop at a particular ball. But when I look in the videos, what I thought in particular, it isn't so much my counterclockwise or my.
Oh, okay. Clockwise, counterclockwise. I didn't know what those CWs.
Oh yeah, clockwise. That's clockwise and counterclockwise. My away, because I'm right-handed. My away and my go out, and then even my stop hand when I want them to stop the ball.
Okay, we covered that.
Those look so alike. So I'm going back and making sure those verbals are a lot stronger. So that's something, it's just something, what's anybody else finding like that? When you look at your cues, when you look at your, your physical cues, what else are people finding where their cues really are not clear to the dog? Or maybe you've got it worked out and so they are clear. So that becomes maybe a better question.
Anybody?
I get mixed up between my own verbal and my own physical cues because I'll say go left, but point right. And the dogs, because we're still working close, will go right. But I have to get in my head. My brain has to work with my arms better.
Yes.
So with you, man.
We're off. That's what I mean.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way I would do left and right because I'd have to first and go, okay, did it make an L? Then it's left.
Oh, but wait, my dog's facing me now, so it's their left. What way is that? Oh, I'd be 10 minutes trying to figure out which way to cue. That's one of the reasons I have to have the circulars.
I have a question. And so I was originally trained the overs, the left and right on the grid was done by, say, if you're going to move your dog over to your left, you would step left and have a hand going straight out, pointing left. And that is how I was taught. And it worked fine for, the directional skill. And it only became a problem with balls in order. But what as the dog got farther away, what was happening was I think the difference between a move left and a come back to a hand target looked too much the same from a distance. So that was one thing that I noticed. And also with my beginning class, that my people were sloppy and their hand targets and move overs looked exactly the same. So after watching most everybody else is doing it another way, I started switching to the overs being, you turn the side of your body and kind of move the dog. So like you were saying, Lisa, push the dog onto the next ball. So I'm wondering if anyone else has a thought about when you turn the side of your body to the dog, is that a good physical cue, and does it work at a distance? Are they going to see it?
I think it gets lost in distance, it seems to me, and I would let the agility people weigh in on that too, because they're always pushing their dog from their side forward. I myself, this is where my crossbody kicks in, because once I've sent my dog out there and they are facing me, if I want to move them right, I put my right arm out and I step to the right, and my dogs are pretty good with that cue because my right arm is out and I'm asking them to move to their left because they're opposite of me, but my arm is out and I'm stepping that way as well.
All right, your dog is moving to your left. You're using your right arm and you're stepping to your left.
I'm using my right arm So
Yeah.
if my dog is facing me
Mhm.
and I want them to go to the right, I'm
Mhm.
going to put out my right arm and I'm going to step to the right
Oh,
to
okay.
move
So
them to the next ball over.
and that's working with
Lisa,
you
I
better
do
at
the
a
same
distance.
thing.
Sorry.
I said, Lisa, I do the same thing exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And I will turn my body to whichever way I want them to go and move them sideways.
Okay. That's what I've been trying.
And so with that, okay, so in that scenario, you've got, and I'm not trying to be devil's advocate here. This is honest question. Your dog stopped behind a ball, and there is a ball directly to their left, but there's also a ball to the left and further back or closer in, either way.
Right.
But let's go with further back. There's also a ball to their left further back. How do you distinguish and get them to go back to the further back one versus the one that is straight to their left?
I would tell them to go on, and I would take my right arm cross body to the left, and I would step that direction. So I'm telling them the verbal to go on. For my dogs, that means turn around and go behind me. And then I'm going to move my body so that I'm directly in line with that ball that I want them to push.
Same here. I would send my dog with my left arm and I would say go out, and I'd line myself up with that ball on the left that I wanted.
So, so the dog's already out there on the field behind a ball, and so you would still be able to use your go, whatever your go out cue is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. That's
Yeah. Okay. Instead of moving them straight to the left and then asking them to go out to the one behind them.
mm-hmm.
You could do it either way. Either way.
Well, it's faster to go at a diagonal if you can get them to. In a way, you're
Go
giving them
out.
two. You're trying to give them. You're giving a verbal cue to go out and a physical cue to move over. I like that.
Right.
For me, I think if I moved them sideways and there was a ball, out there too that was a little forward, if I'm just moving them sideways first, they're going to cue into the ball that's closest.
Exactly.
Whereas,
That's what,
Yeah.
yep.
yeah, so I think so I would have a harder time, or I would confuse them more
Yeah.
than sending them back first.
Right.
Do you ever practice with a mat behind them and no ball, like to teach them when I say go out, you just need to keep moving further back on the field. Don't worry so much about where the balls are.
Well,
Yes.
that's what I did in the beginning, yes.
Basically, JoJo ignores mats. She doesn't like mats. She just, she at this point. So I don't know whether I should add back a mat and do some high value mat work.
I think
Quinn and I don't use mats a lot, but we have started using mats in Treibball, and he doesn't really know what they're for, but he knows he gets a treat when he touches one. So if I send him out and he touches a mat, he gets a treat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where you start. It's good.
Yeah. I will tend to, when we play in World Tribal League, there will be a lot of, stopping at places other than behind balls. And Nancy leaves it open whether we use, a flat mat or if we use a cone or some other thing. And I will, instead of using a mat, I will use cones or buckets or something. And Mickey will respond quite well. My old girl would too, if they were cones or buckets or something that stuck up versus mats on the ground when there's also balls around. And I just took to, it's easier to see a ball sticking up versus a mat flat on the ground. But if I have cones or buckets out there, they treat those just like the balls. They go around them, they stop behind them. So just something to think about. If you're having trouble with, you've got balls, but you're trying to put mats somewhere else on the field and have them respond to them.
Right.
You might find it's easier if it's something that sticks up from the ground.
But that's actually part of the issue is that I'm wanting her to understand that like maybe she doesn't see the ball because it's all the way against the back fence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want her to, keep running back.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's what you did, right, Carolyn? That you taught him just when I say go out, go out, go out, it means just keep running back. And
Yeah.
then,
Mm-hmm.
and I would want to use a mat because I would want her to be willing to run to nothing. That's really what I need, right?
Yeah, just keep going until I tell you. And that was the with the distance part with the balls in order, because he got used to that the grid where he was ping ponging from ball to ball until he got to the right one, instead of just going straight out. So what I ultimately ended up having to do is this endless, I wouldn't say it's chatter, but like something that say keep going, like go out, go out, go. It was kind of like so he heard my voice, and it's when my voice stopped, it is when he would stop. Ultimately, he didn't always do it, but that was the goal, is that my cue verbally was just go out or come by, away, whatever I was using, it had to be. And I've seen a lot of and other people I noticed did it too in World Treibball League and some other videos I've seen in Europe, that people had to constantly say something. I think that was a training issue on my part. Had I known it was going to be so difficult, I would much rather be able to just, Chris, I think you can just say, come by, and the dog will keep going until they do say something, where I ultimately had to do it opposite, because I didn't teach that from the beginning. I didn't teach this, keep going until I tell you to stop, with one cue. So now I have to kind of, it's almost like I just call it like a river of, go away, just keep my foot
keep going
until it's stop. Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah.
It's just a keep going.
Yeah.
So I'd rather not have to do that, and maybe at some point I can stop and I can, but because I didn't teach that, I didn't teach to go further out until I tell you stop from the beginning. This is how I had to do it, and I think other people had to resort to that as well. But yeah, it's all a learning thing. It works for me, and it doesn't. But the idea between a mat and a cone or an object, I agree that unless they know that you're putting that mat, especially at a distance, it's very hard to see. So I think if they're used to doing a lineup behind a cone or a bucket, it might be easier maybe for JoJo if you put like a bucket at a distance, and then maybe
if I added the distance really slowly, she would start to go, oh, there might be a mat out there, and if I hit that mat, then I'll get my cookie,
Yeah.
Maybe.
And
all right, well,
I also agree, because after doing World Treibball League, and I don't have any distance on keeper anymore, with my students too, I have learned that if the dog won't touch a flat object on the ground, then don't use a cone. If the dog will follow a bucket or a cone, use what the dog was like, I got it.
Yeah.
But if they're struggling with a flat mat on the ground because they can't see it, like I've had a lot of dogs go from a flat mat to even a frisbee, and they'll target that frisbee, but they won't target the flat round mat. Because they can see it better, or the different color. I don't know. It sticks up a little bit more, just like, again, a cone or a bucket. And I think they're very, very useful tools that, if it works for your dog, then use it for that dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I kind of like the idea that I like to be able to send them to something with a big distance. When if I send my dog out there, I like the message. If I keep sending you, there's something out there. You're going to find there's a ball. It's part of that's kind of part of the distance thing. If I've just because you didn't see that ball in the far corner that you knocked 75 feet away doesn't mean it's not there. If it's the last ball. If I keep sending you, there's a ball. I didn't send you out there for nothing. So and that's why another reason I'll tend to work with a cone. There's something out there for you to find, and it's most likely a ball, and you need to push it. Keep going, buddy. Because yeah, he can often be the, yeah, I looked around, I didn't see anything, so I'll just come on back in. No, nope, nope, nope. Go get that sucker. It's out there.
Guys, it's 5 o'clock. I don't know how that happened.
I don't either. Beats me.
Anybody have any last questions or things they want to input?
Lots of good stuff. Lots of good,
Yeah.
lots of good information.
Yeah, really appreciate everything everybody contributed. That was very interesting.
Lots to think
Yeah,
about.
and just if anybody, we can't tell you how much from the training aspect of this, how valuable seeing other people's videos is. So if you want to post them on Facebook or send them by email, if anybody's interested, because I think we learn from watching other people, especially because this is so new. And I think it carried with me that point that I think we struggle a little bit because we don't get to see other people play.
Mhm.
You know, it's not like you can go to a local trial because there isn't any, but I mean, so we're relying on other people's videos and of how it's being done and just so anybody out there that wants to share with us, we can, or the crossbody, because that's something I've struggled with because I started with the crossbody. Just all these little things are so valuable to us and to the sport because we really it's so new that it. Anyway, I just anybody who here tonight that we're willing to share, I'll send an email out or.
Well, yeah, just post your training videos up
Yes,
on the Nate
please.
members.
Yeah.
Let's all do that. Everyone
Let's
who's here
all do that.
today,
Everybody promise.
post a
Yes.
video,
Yes.
okay?
And we'll, we've talked about doing something like that before, and always that fear of, we're going to work very hard to keep it a safe place.
Yeah. So yeah,
it has to be.
All right. Well, we should probably go ahead and knock off then for the night. And yeah, really appreciate everybody coming today, and be safe and well.
Yes.
In this crazy time.
It's crazy times.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Play with your dogs.
Be safe.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.